My parents promised they'd be there on the biggest day of my life, then ghosted me for cocktails at my brother's lakehouse. That was the day I decided the Anderson name had to go. Okay, so imagine this. I'm standing there, in my doctoral regalia, at the Greensboro Coliseum, feeling this surge of anticipation mixed with pure exhaustion. 6 years. 6 grueling years of pharmacy school, and this was it. May 10th, 2 p.m. Doctor of Pharmacy. I'd earned this. I scanned the rows, looking for them, looking for the 6 seats reserved for my family, but they were just devastatingly empty. My chest tightened with this hollow ache. Just then, Clara, my best friend, she's waving like a maniac from the 3rd row, her entire family holding up this bright yellow banner that screamed, "Congratulations, Dr. Anderson," in bold red letters. They'd driven 4 hours from Virginia, just for me. Her parents looked at me with this beaming pride, the kind of pride that should have been radiating from my own mother and father. But Eleanor and Richard Anderson? They were nowhere to be found. The ceremony announcer's voice boomed through the arena, "Ladies and gentlemen, we will now present the Doctor of Pharmacy candidates." My phone buzzed against my hip. It was 1:30 p.m. I knew I shouldn't look. I should be focusing on walking across that stage, on the diploma that represented everything I'd fought for. But my hand, it just moved to my pocket on its own. It was a group text from Beatrice, my sister. A selfie. There she was, my 33-year-old sister, mimosa in hand, face flushed with champagne and sunshine. And behind her? Griffin, my brother, grinning, his arm around our mother, Eleanor. Her perfectly styled hair caught the light as she laughed at something off camera. My dad, Richard, was there too, holding a crystal tumbler, that wide, satisfied banker's smile plastered across his face. Then my stomach just dropped. The backdrop. A massive banner stretching across Griffin's lakehouse deck. Griffin's big spring bash. The caption? Party of the year. "Wish you were here, Lucy." Son, my hands started shaking. I scrolled up through the text chain, the history laid out like a punch to the gut. November 12th. That was the day I sent the graduation announcements, save the date, printed in elegant script. Eleanor's reply, "Of course, darling. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Richard, "Proud of you, kiddo. Mark it on the calendar." Griffin, "Can't wait to celebrate Dr. Lucy." Beatrice, "Already planning my outfit." This is huge. They all promised. Every single one of them. I called my mother immediately. It rang 3 times before she picked up, her voice bright and breathless over the clinking glasses and laughter. "Lucille, I can't talk. The state senator just arrived. I must go." And then, she hung up. Just like that. The announcer called another name. Then another. The alphabet was closing in on Anderson. And I was just frozen, staring at my phone. Griffin's $1.8 million lakehouse. The one my dad helped him buy last year when he made vice president at the bank. The same year my dad told me he couldn't spare $200 for my organic chemistry textbooks because I needed to manage my budget better. That memory just flooded back, sharp and painful. I was 19, standing in his home office, syllabus in hand. $200 for books, Lucille? You have to learn fiscal responsibility. Maybe get a part-time job. 2 weeks later, Griffin pulled up in a brand new convertible. Congratulations, gift for landing a summer internship that paid more than my pharmacy tech job. He's been so stressed, Eleanor had explained, as I stared at the car. This internship is really demanding. He deserves something special. It was a pattern that stretched back years. At 16, my state-level science fair victory earned a distracted, "That's nice, dear," from Eleanor, while she planned Griffin's celebration dinner at the Palm for being named football captain. She called 3 restaurants to find the perfect table. Insisted on their finest wine. Invited Griffin's entire team. My trophy sat on the kitchen counter for a week before I moved it to my bedroom myself. "Anderson, Lucille." The announcer's voice cut through my spiral. This was it. My moment. I stood on unsteady legs and walked toward the stage. Each step echoed in the vast space. Clara's family erupted in cheers. Her father cupped his hands, shouting, "That's our girl." Her mother wiped away tears. Her little brother whistled so loud, It carried across the entire Coliseum. I climbed the stairs. The dean of pharmacy smiled, extending my diploma with both hands. Congratulations, Dr. Anderson. You've earned this. Dr. Anderson. The title I'd dreamed about for years. But as I accepted the diploma and turned to the audience, my eyes landed on those 6 empty seats again. Clara was jumping up and down, her banner waving wildly. Her father had his arm around her mother, both beaming with genuine joy. This was what family support looked like. This was what I should have had. But instead, I had a text message photo of my family toasting my brother's pool party while I walked across the graduation stage alone. After the ceremony, I sat in my car, cap and gown still on. Clara had insisted on photos, her family gathering around me like I was their own daughter. When her father put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't you worry, Dr. Anderson, we can cheer loud enough for 6 people," I almost broke down right there. Now, in the silent Honda Civic, I scrolled through my graduation announcements. Most went to professors, colleagues, friends. But one envelope I'd held longer than the others. Addressed to Grandma Vance. She'd been gone for 5 years, but I'd still carefully written her address before remembering. Grandma Vance was the only one who ever showed genuine interest in my achievements. "So, how do those chain reactions of yours work, Lucille?" she'd asked when I was 12, leaning in conspiratorially after I won the middle school chemistry competition. "Tell me all about it." She listened to my rambling explanation about molecular bonds and electron transfers with the kind of focused attention I craved from everyone else. She asked follow-up questions. She remembered details weeks later. My brilliant granddaughter, she'd called me. Never comparing me to Griffin or Beatrice. Never minimizing my accomplishments. The name Vance. It carried weight in my chest. It represented something the Anderson name never had. Genuine love and authentic support. I started the engine and pulled out of the Coliseum parking lot, my diploma lying flat on the passenger seat. 6 years of late nights, impossible exams, clinical rotations, research papers. 6 years of proving myself over and over. And they chose a pool party. As I drove toward Charlotte, toward the apartment I'd need to pack, and the life I'd need to leave behind, one thought crystallized in my mind with startling clarity. I was done being the invisible Anderson. It was time to figure out who Lucille really was when she stopped performing for an audience that would never applaud. The drive back to Charlotte felt endless. Every mile marker was a reminder that I was heading toward the people who chose Griffin's pool party over my doctorate. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. But I needed to understand. I needed to know exactly how calculated this betrayal was. Back in my apartment, I spread the evidence across my kitchen table like a detective working a case. Text messages, email chains, calendar invitations. The graduation announcement I mailed in November, save the date, carefully scripted. Then I found it. The smoking gun, buried in my phone's message history. A message saying they wouldn't attend my graduation. Eleanor's voice echoed in my memory as I read her exact words, "Lucille, you must understand. This isn't just a party. The state senator and partners from Wells Fargo will be there. This is a critical networking opportunity for Griffin's career. Your graduation, well, it's just a ceremony, isn't it? Just a ceremony. 6 years of my life, reduced to just a ceremony, so Griffin could schmooze with politicians and bankers at his lakehouse. The state senator who probably didn't even remember Griffin's name. The Wells Fargo partners who saw him as Richard Anderson's son, not an individual with merit. I stared at that text until the words blurred. This wasn't a scheduling conflict or a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, cold-blooded choice. Eleanor weighed my doctoral graduation against Griffin's networking opportunity and decided mine was expendable. The rage built slowly, then all at once. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack. 2 days later, I walked into the Mecklenburg County Courthouse, a manila folder in hand, filled with forms I'd printed at 3 a.m. The fluorescent lights buzzed. I waited in line. When my number was called, I approached the bench where Judge Harrison sat. He was older, probably my dad's age, silver hair, reading glasses. He looked at my petition. "Anderson?" That's a powerful name in Charlotte, young lady. He studied me. You're sure about this? Changing your name is a serious matter. I stood straighter, my voice clear and steady. I am positive, Your Honor. My grandmother was a Vance. I want to honor her. Judge Harrison examined the paperwork, then looked at me again. Something in my expression must have convinced him, because he nodded slowly. So ordered. Good luck, Miss Vance. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd shed a skin that never fit. The name Anderson suddenly felt foreign, like a costume I'd worn for 29 years without realizing it didn't belong to me. Lucille Vance. The name tasted different in my mouth. It tasted like freedom. The packing took 3 days. I was ruthless. Family photos went in the trash. The Christmas ornament Eleanor gave me, the Anderson family, painted in gold, got buried under coffee grounds. Griffin's college graduation photo, where everyone was beaming like he'd won the Nobel Prize instead of barely passing business school. Straight into the dumpster. But Grandma Vance's recipe box? That came with me. The science trophy from high school that nobody else ever noticed? That too. My pharmacy textbooks, worn and highlighted, stacked neatly in moving boxes. These were the pieces of myself that mattered. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not Eleanor. Not Richard. Not even Beatrice, who was probably still nursing a hangover from Griffin's party of the year. They'd figure it out when my apartment sat empty and my phone number went straight to voicemail. The Honda Civic was packed to the ceiling when I started the engine at sunrise. Boston was 847 miles northeast. A new life. A new name. A clean slate. I didn't just move to Boston. I fled. The first 300 miles? I cried. Ugly, gasping sobs that I'd been holding back for weeks. I pulled over twice at rest stops to collect myself, but the tears just kept coming. I was grieving something I never actually had. A family that would celebrate my achievements instead of treating them as inconveniences. Somewhere outside Richmond, Virginia, I pulled into a gas station, staring at my phone. The lock screen still showed the family photo from last Christmas. All of us around Eleanor's perfect tree, wearing coordinated sweaters she'd bought for everyone. Griffin's arm around my shoulders, his smile wide and genuine. He probably didn't even know I changed my name. He probably didn't know I was driving away from everything we shared. I deleted the photo with a decisive swipe. The default landscape wallpaper felt like breathing again. As I crossed into Pennsylvania, the Charlotte pop radio station started cutting out. Static replaced the familiar voices I'd heard every morning for years. Instead of finding another music station, I plugged in my phone and scrolled to a dense pharmacology podcast about drug interactions in elderly patients. The narrator's voice was calm, scientific, methodical. She discussed half-lives and metabolism rates with the same precision I planned to use rebuilding my life. No drama, no emotional manipulation. Just facts, evidence, and logical conclusions. By the time I hit the Connecticut state line, the tears were gone. My jaw was set. My hands steady on the wheel. The rearview mirror showed everything I was leaving behind, but I didn't look back. The sign for Boston appeared as the sun set behind me. Welcome to Boston. Population 685,000. Home to world-class hospitals, prestigious universities, and people who've never heard the name Anderson carry any weight at all. I merged onto the highway toward Mass General Hospital, toward my new apartment, toward a life where my achievements mattered more than my brother's networking events. In the distance, the city lights sparkled like promises. Lucille Vance was driving toward her future, and she wasn't looking back. The night after my drive, I sat in my empty Boston apartment, listening to rain hammer against windows I'd never seen in daylight. The sound echoed off bare walls, amplifying the silence that surrounded me like a physical weight. Everything I owned fit in 6 cardboard boxes stacked against the far wall. My diploma leaned against one of them, still in its ceremonial folder. Dr. Lucille Anderson, printed in elegant script across expensive paper. Soon, it would read, Dr. Lucille Vance, but tonight it felt like evidence of a life I wasn't sure I had the courage to abandon completely. The loneliness pressed against my chest until breathing became a conscious effort. Did I do the right thing? Am I completely insane? The questions circled through my mind like water down a drain, pulling every rational thought into its vortex. I reached for my old phone. The one with all the Anderson contacts saved under family labels: Mom, Dad, Griffin. My thumb hovered over Eleanor's name, trembling with the weight of a single decision that could end this terrible isolation. One call. One tearful apology. Mine, not theirs. I'm sorry I overreacted. I understand Griffin's career is important. Please forgive me for being so selfish. The words tasted bitter in my imagination, but they would work. Eleanor would accept my surrender with gracious magnanimity. Richard would offer to help with my moving expenses back to Charlotte. Within a week, I could be Dr. Anderson again, sliding back into my familiar role as the family's invisible achiever. My thumb moved closer to the call button. The apartment felt cavernous around me, like I was the last person left in the world. No Clara driving 4 hours to cheer me on. No colleagues who knew my research. No professors who remembered my potential. Just me and this crushing weight of absolute solitude. The trembling in my hand spread up my arm. I was about to press Eleanor's name when my new phone lit up on the coffee table. The screen glowed bright blue in the dark room, and I nearly dropped the old phone in surprise. It was an email from Mass General Hospital. Welcome to our pharmacy team, Dr. Vance. Your orientation begins Monday at 8 a.m. Please report to Human Resources on the 3rd floor of the main building. We look forward to working with you. Sincerely, Dr. Patricia Morgan, Chief of Pharmacy. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the words sank in completely. Dr. Vance. Not Anderson. Vance. It was real. This new life wasn't a fantasy I'd constructed during a temporary breakdown. Mass General Hospital expected Dr. Lucille Vance to show up Monday morning, ready to begin her career as a clinical pharmacist. They'd printed badges with my chosen name. Assign me to cases. Trust me to review medication interactions that could save lives or cause catastrophic harm. I took a shuddering breath that seemed to fill my lungs for the first time since arriving in Boston. The email represented more than a job. It was proof that I could exist outside the Anderson family ecosystem. That my pharmaceutical knowledge and clinical training had value independent of Eleanor's approval or Richard's financial support. I powered down the old phone without making the call, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it into a cardboard box I'd marked for the dumpster. The small weight of it hitting the bottom made a hollow thud that sounded like finality. Back at my laptop, I began typing a response to Dr. Morgan. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to contributing to the pharmacy team and serving Mass General's patients. I will report Monday morning as requested. Sincerely, Dr. Lucille Vance. I read the signature line twice before hitting send. Dr. Lucille Vance. The name felt strange and powerful, like trying on clothes that fit perfectly but looked nothing like what I'd worn before. My next email went to the university's registrar's office. I attached the court order from Mecklenburg County, the official document that legally transformed me from Anderson to Vance. The form letter I typed was businesslike and brief. Please update my academic records to reflect my legal name change. I am requesting that my diploma be reprinted with my current legal name, Lucille Vance. Attached is the certified court order documenting this change. Thank you for your assistance. Within an hour, I received a confirmation. Your request has been processed. Your updated diploma will be available for pickup or mailing within 2 weeks. Congratulations on your degree, Dr. Vance. Dr. Vance. Even from a stranger in a registrar's office, the name carried a weight I never felt as an Anderson. It didn't come with decades of family history defining my worth through comparison to Griffin's achievements. There were no expectations attached to the Vance name, except the ones I created through my own actions. The rain against the windows began to sound less like isolation and more like protection. The empty apartment didn't feel cavernous anymore. It felt clean, uncluttered by decades of family drama and emotional manipulation. I walked to my boxes and pulled out a framed photo I'd packed at the last minute. Grandma Vance and me at my high school graduation, her arm around my shoulders as she beamed with genuine pride. She was wearing her best dress and the pearl earrings she saved for special occasions. Her face radiated the kind of authentic joy Eleanor had never shown for any of my accomplishments. "Tell me about those chemistry courses you're planning to take," she'd said after the ceremony. "I want to understand what my brilliant granddaughter is going to study." Not brilliant compared to anyone else. Just brilliant. Period. I placed the photo on the windowsill where I could see it from my kitchen table. Tomorrow, I'd buy groceries and start learning my new neighborhood. Monday, I'd report to Mass General as Dr. Vance and begin building a career based on my clinical knowledge rather than family connections. The legal name change was complete. All Anderson phone numbers were blocked. Email filters automatically deleted anything sent from Charlotte addresses. I was, for the first time in my life, utterly and completely alone. But alone felt different than I expected. The Anderson family's absence wasn't a wound anymore. It was an amputation that removed something diseased, leaving healthy tissue to heal properly. The victory of self-protection was real and substantial, but it came paired with the sharp grief of understanding that some relationships can't be salvaged, only escaped. Outside my window, Boston continued its life without me. 8 million strangers who didn't know I was Richard Anderson's invisible daughter or Griffin Anderson's overlooked sister. They only knew what I showed them through my work, my choices, my character. For the first time, that felt like more than enough. 6 months after I vanished from Charlotte, Richard sat in his mahogany-paneled office on the 32nd floor of First Union Plaza, staring at a manila folder like it contained evidence of his own failure. The private investigator, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of patience that comes from tracking down cheating spouses for 20 years, slid the folder across Richard's desk with practiced indifference. "She's not missing, Mr. Anderson." Richard's hands remained flat on his desk blotter, unwilling to touch the folder. The missing person report had been his idea, filed 3 months ago when Eleanor's calls to my old number went straight to a disconnected message. They'd convinced themselves something terrible had happened. Kidnapping. Accident. Anything except the truth. "She's in Boston," the investigator continued, his voice matter-of-fact. "Works at Mass General Hospital. She's Dr. Lucille Vance now." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. His face drained of color as he finally opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside, copies of my Massachusetts medical license, my Mass General employment records, my new address on Beacon Hill, and my legal name change documentation. Vance. She took her grandmother's name. Richard's voice came out strangled. The issue wasn't my safety. The missing person charade was never about concern for my well-being. It was about the audacity of my escape, the public erasure of his precious Anderson legacy from my professional identity. "Your daughter is thriving, sir. Excellent employment record. Clean credit. No criminal activity." The investigator retrieved his folder. Just a young woman who wanted a fresh start. After the man left, Richard sat alone in his office, staring out at the Charlotte skyline. The Anderson name built this city's financial district for generations of banking excellence. And his youngest daughter threw it away like garbage. Meanwhile, miles north, I was discovering exactly how immune I'd become to their desperate attempts at control. Griffin's message came through LinkedIn on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing patient charts in the Mass General Pharmacy. The notification popped up on my computer screen, "Message from Griffin Anderson." A year ago, seeing his name would have sent my heart rate spiking, my stomach clenching with that familiar cocktail of hope and dread. Now, I read it with the clinical detachment I reserved for pharmaceutical interaction warnings. "Mom is devastated that you changed your name. This is so selfish. You're hurting the entire family with this childish tantrum. Dad had to hire a private investigator. Because we thought you were dead. How could you do this to us?" I read the message twice. Then I clicked block and returned to my patient charts without so much as a spike in my heart rate. The words that would have destroyed me a year ago bounced off me like rain on concrete. For the first time in my life, I was completely immune to Anderson family manipulation. My first year of residency at Mass General was brutal in every way except the one that mattered most. No family drama sucking the life out of every achievement. When I dragged myself home after 14-hour shifts, my exhaustion was clean, pure, the result of meaningful work instead of emotional warfare. That's how I was functioning when the complex case came in on a Thursday morning in March. Mrs. Patterson, 67, post-liver transplant patient, presenting with multi-organ failure. Her kidneys were shutting down, blood pressure unstable, latest labs looked like a medical school nightmare. The attending physicians are stumped. Dr. Reyes, the head of transplant medicine, stood at Mrs. Patterson's bedside with 3 residents and an infectious disease specialist, all of them wearing identical expressions of controlled panic. We've run every test twice. Rejection markers are negative, infection panels are clean, but she's failing across multiple systems simultaneously. I was supposed to be reviewing her medication reconciliation, a routine task for the pharmacy resident, but something about her drug list just nagged at me, like a word I couldn't remember. I stayed up all night in the medical library, cross-referencing every medication, every supplement, every possible interaction. At 4 a.m., I found it, buried in a case study from a Swedish medical journal, a rare, 1 in a million adverse reaction between her immunosuppressant and a seemingly innocuous blood pressure medication. The combination created a cascade failure that mimicked rejection while actually being completely reversible. I arrived at morning rounds terrified but certain, clutching my printouts like evidence at a trial. When Dr. Reyes called for pharmacy input, my voice shook as I presented my findings. I believe we're looking at a previously unreported interaction between tacrolimus and her ACE inhibitor. The pathway involves cytochrome P450 enzyme induction that creates a feedback loop affecting multiple organ systems. The silence stretched for 15 seconds. Dr. Reyes, a notoriously difficult woman who once made a resident cry during rounds, stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Show me the literature." I handed her my research, pages of highlighted text and chemical pathway diagrams that I'd memorized completely. She read in silence while the entire medical team waited. Finally, she looked up. "Good work, Dr. Vance. You just saved a life." That quiet, "good work," reverberated through my chest with more power than any standing ovation the Andersons ever gave Griffin. This praise was earned, specific, and real. It came from someone who respected my confidence, not someone trying to manipulate my emotions. Mrs. Patterson recovered completely after we adjusted her medications. 3 weeks later, she sent a thank you card addressed to Dr. Vance and the angels at Mass General. I kept it taped to my computer monitor. I met Ben at the most unlikely place imaginable, a medical ethics symposium that's about as exciting as watching paint dry in a library. But the topic was data modeling in pharmaceutical research, and when he presented his findings on algorithmic bias in clinical trials, I couldn't help myself. During the Q&A, I raised my hand. "Your methodology assumes random distribution of confounding variables, but that's exactly the bias you're trying to identify. You're measuring the problem with the same flawed tools that created it." The room went silent. Ben looked at me for a long moment, then grinned. "You're absolutely right. The circular logic is embarrassingly obvious now that you've pointed it out." He didn't try to defend his work or minimize my critique. He just listened. After the session, he found me at the coffee station. "You were right about the data bias," he said, handing me a cup. "I'm Ben. Can I buy you dinner so you can tell me what else I'm wrong about?" His respect for my intellect hit me like a revelation. Griffin used to argue with me to win. Richard dismissed my opinions before I finished speaking. Ben wanted to hear more. "I'm Lucille," I said, accepting his coffee. "And yes, you can buy me dinner, but fair warning, I have opinions about everything." "Perfect," he said. "So do I. This should be interesting." 6 months later, Ben watched me pace around my apartment, muttering pharmaceutical terminology while preparing for a major presentation to the hospital board about a new pharmacy protocol I'd designed. I was stressed, scattered, completely in my own head. He didn't tell me to calm down or offer empty reassurances. Instead, he quietly brought me coffee and a sandwich I forgot to eat. He smiled and nodded, a silent sign that he was always here, watching me, so I didn't have to be afraid. I stopped pacing and looked at him. The memory of 16-year-old me, alone with my science fair trophy, flashed through my mind with painful clarity. This quiet, steadfast support was the validation I'd been seeking my entire life. It wasn't about flashy celebrations or networking opportunities. It was about someone making space for me to succeed. That night, as I presented my research to a room full of department heads and hospital administrators, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete confidence in my own worth, independent of anyone else's approval. The foundation was solid now. Everything I built from here would be mine. For years have passed since I fled Charlotte with nothing but my diploma and a fierce determination to build something real. The woman who stood alone at graduation feels like someone I used to know, someone whose desperate need for approval once dictated every decision. I'm adjusting my white coat in the mirror of my new office at Mass General Hospital. Lead clinical pharmacist. The nameplate on my door reads Dr. Lucille Vance, Pharm D, in crisp black lettering. No Anderson in sight. Clara bursts through the door without knocking, her arms full of congratulatory flowers from colleagues back in Virginia. Look at you, hotshot. Your own office with actual windows that don't face a brick wall. She laughed. The view of the parking garage is quite inspiring. I laughed too, accepting the bouquet she thrust into my hands. I can see people coming and going, very metaphorical. She plopped into the visitor's chair across from my desk, the same chair where pharmaceutical sales representatives will soon sit, seeking my approval for their latest compounds. The irony wasn't lost on me. People now sought my validation, my professional opinion, my signature on formulary recommendations. Tell me everything about the promotion ceremony, Clara demanded. And don't you dare downplay it. I want details. The memory of yesterday's announcement still felt surreal. Dr. Patricia Chin, the chief of pharmacy, called me into her office with that expression she wears when discussing medication errors. My stomach dropped, wondering what mistake I'd made, what protocol I'd missed. Lucille, sit down. She gestured to the chair across from her mahogany desk, the same spot where she'd interviewed me 4 years ago, when I was just another desperate graduate seeking validation through professional achievement. I'll cut to the chase. The board approved your promotion to lead clinical pharmacist. Congratulations. The moment had passed in slow motion. For years of proving myself, of staying late to review complex cases, of presenting research findings to skeptical attending physicians, of earning respect one clinical decision at a time. All of it culminating in those simple words, congratulations. I still can't believe it, I tell Clara now, sinking into my new desk chair. The leather was real, not the fake vinyl from my previous cubicle. Dr. Chin said my work on the post-transplant protocol alone justified the promotion. Clara grins. Remember that case you told me about? The one where you figured out the medication interaction everyone else missed. The memory floods back. Mrs. Patterson. A huge case where I'd spent sleepless nights cross-referencing obscure drug interactions, diving deep into pharmaceutical literature that most clinicians never touch. That's what real achievement feels like, I tell Clara. Saving lives, not collecting trophies to impress people who couldn't care less. My phone buzzes with a text from Ben, who's currently presenting his latest biotech research at a conference in San Francisco. Proud of you, lead pharmacist Vance. Can't wait to celebrate properly when I get home tomorrow. Dinner reservations at that place you love. The simplicity of his support still catches me off guard sometimes. No competition, no conditions, no need to diminish my success to make room for his ego. Just genuine pride in my accomplishments. Clara notices my smile. Ben? He made dinner reservations to celebrate? At Benedetto? That little Italian place in the North End? The one with the terrible parking and amazing tiramisu. That's the one. I set my phone down, but the warmth of Ben's message lingers. You know what's strange? I say. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to say this promotion was a mistake, or that I don't deserve it. Clara's expression grows serious. That's the Anderson programming talking. You've spent your whole life believing you had to earn love through achievement, but even perfect performance was never enough for them. She's right, of course. The invisible achiever syndrome ran so deep I'd carried it to Boston, into my professional relationships, into the way I approached every challenge as a test of my worthiness. But something shifted over these 4 years. The colleagues who became my chosen family celebrated my clinical victories without comparing them to anyone else's accomplishments. My research publications earned recognition based solely on their merit. My patient care awards accumulated not because I was competing for approval, but because I was genuinely good at my job. I published 3 research papers this year, I say, more to myself than to Clara. Presented at 2 national conferences. Led the implementation of a new pharmacy protocol that reduced medication errors by 18%. And she prompts. And nobody minimized those achievements. Nobody suggested I was showing off or getting too big for my britches. Nobody threw a pool party on the same day to steal attention from my success. Clara reaches across the desk and squeezes my hand. Welcome to what normal family support feels like. This is how people who love you properly react to your wins. Through my office window, I watch a young resident hurry across the parking garage, white coat flapping behind him, probably rushing to save someone's life. 4 years ago, that was me, desperate to prove my competence to anyone who would listen. Now, I'm the one people come to for answers. The lead clinical pharmacist whose recommendations carry weight, whose expertise is sought and valued. The invisible achiever became highly visible to everyone who matters. My computer chimes with an email notification. The sender's name makes my breath catch, Eleanor Anderson. Clara notices my face change. What is it? I stare at the subject line, your wedding announcement. Below it, my email filter has automatically sorted the message into a folder labeled, blocked senders, auto-delete. The irony is perfect. Eleanor discovered my engagement through mutual acquaintances on social media, saw photos of the venue Ben and I toured last weekend, probably caught wind of the bridal shower my colleagues are planning for next month. I can picture her panic as clearly as if I were standing in her Charlotte living room. The desperate realization that her daughter was getting married and she wasn't consulted, wasn't included, wasn't even informed. My mother tried to email me about the wedding, I tell Clara, clicking on the folder to see the blocked message list. It went straight to my filters. Clara's eyebrows shoot up. Are you going to read it? I hover the cursor over the email for a moment, then close the folder without opening it. No. Whatever manipulation, whatever guilt trip, whatever demand for inclusion she's typed up, it doesn't have an address anymore. The email would be automatically deleted in 30 days, unread and unanswered. Eleanor's panic and drama, her desperate attempt to insert herself into my life, would disappear into the digital void without ever reaching me. This was the true victory. Not just that I built a successful career despite their neglect, but that their opinions no longer had the power to wound me. Their panic about being excluded from my wedding day carried no weight because I'd finally learned what authentic support looked like. Ben's text. Dr. Chen's professional respect. Clara's unwavering loyalty. My colleagues' genuine celebration of my achievements. This is what family feels like when it's chosen, rather than assigned. I delete the email notification and turn back to Clara, who's watching me with something like wonder. 4 years ago, that would have destroyed you, she says quietly. 4 years ago, I was still performing for their approval. I lean back in my real leather chair, looking out at the parking garage where people come and go without needing anyone's permission. Now, I'm living for my own. A year later, I got another promotion and became Dr. Lucille Vance, lead clinical pharmacist, in bold, confident letters. The youngest person ever to hold this position at Mass General. My research on post-transplant medication protocols has been published in 3 major journals. Speaking engagements pile up on my desk faster than I can accept them. But none of that compares to the quiet satisfaction I feel when I look at my left hand. The simple platinum band catches the fluorescent light as I review patient charts. Ben proposed a year ago in the most perfectly understated way possible during a medical ethics symposium coffee break. Of all places. Dr. Vance, he'd said, sliding into the seat next to me with 2 cups of terrible conference coffee. I have a hypothesis I'd like you to help me test. Oh, really? I'd raised an eyebrow at his serious expression. And what hypothesis would that be, Dr. Martinez? That we'd make an excellent research partnership? Long term? Say, 50 or 60 years of collaborative work. He'd pulled out a ring box with the same methodical precision he used in his lab. What do you think? Would you be interested in co-authoring the rest of our lives? I'd laughed so hard I nearly spilled coffee on my presentation notes. Ben Martinez, did you just propose to me using the scientific method? Peer review encouraged. He'd grinned, opening the box to reveal a stunning but practical solitaire. So, will you accept my research proposal? The memory still makes me smile as I finish my afternoon rounds. Ben understood something the Anderson family never grasped. Love isn't about grand gestures or flashy displays. It's about showing up consistently, making space for each other's success, and choosing partnership over competition. My phone buzzes with a text from him now. Grocery run complete. Dinner prep started. You focus on changing the world. I'll handle the logistics. See you at 7. The exact words he'd used in his wedding vows 3 weeks ago. Our wedding was everything the Anderson family's events were not. Small, intimate, and filled with people who had earned their place through years of genuine support. Clara flew in from Virginia, tears streaming down her face as she watched me walk down the aisle. My university professor, the one who had guided my doctoral studies, beamed as he walked me down the aisle. You did good, Dr. Vance, he'd whispered, just before we reached the altar. Your grandmother would be proud. Ben's vows had been perfect. No flowery promises about perfection or fairy tale endings, just honest commitment. I don't promise to make your life perfect, he'd said, looking directly into my eyes. But I promise to be your partner, to champion your successes, and to always handle the logistics while you're saving the world. The Andersons were not just uninvited, they were unmissed. I lock my office and head home to the brownstone apartment Ben and I share in Back Bay. The evening light filters through the tall windows as I climb the stairs, and the smell of something delicious drifts from our kitchen. How did the board meeting go? Ben calls from the stove, not turning around as he stirs something that smells like heaven. They approved the protocol. I drop my bag by the door and lean against the kitchen counter. Full implementation across all units starting next month. Of course they did, he turns and grins at me. It's groundbreaking work, Dr. Vance. They'd be idiots not to approve it. This is what the Anderson family never understood. Success shared becomes success doubled. Ben's pride in my achievements doesn't diminish him. It elevates both of us. The next morning arrives gray and rainy. I'm stressed, pacing our living room while reviewing my notes for the major presentation I'm giving to the hospital board about expanding the new pharmacy protocol system-wide. My stomach churns as I mutter key points under my breath, reorganizing slides on my laptop for the 3rd time. Interaction rates decreased by 37%. I recite to the empty room, cost savings projected at $2.4 million annually. I stop and shake my head. No, that's not the right opening. Should I start with patient outcomes or financial impact? Ben appears in the doorway, watching me pace. He doesn't say, calm down, or you'll be fine, or any of the meaningless platitudes I've heard before. Instead, he quietly disappears into the kitchen. 5 minutes later, he returns with a steaming mug of coffee, prepared exactly how I like it, and a plate of toast with the almond butter I forgot to eat for breakfast. You're gonna be brilliant, he says simply, setting both on the coffee table. The protocol is groundbreaking. The board knows it. I stop pacing and look at him. Really look at him, standing there in his rumpled morning shirt, hair sticking up from sleep, offering practical support without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. A memory flashes through my mind with startling clarity. 16-year-old me, standing alone in our kitchen with my state science fair trophy. Eleanor's distracted, that's nice, dear, before rushing off to plan Griffin's celebration dinner, the trophy sitting on the counter for a week before I moved it to my bedroom myself. This moment with Ben is the exact opposite of that memory. This is what I've been searching for my entire life without knowing it. Not applause or elaborate praise, but someone making quiet space for me to succeed. Thank you, I say, and my voice comes out steadier than it has all morning. This is exactly what I needed. I know, he says, kissing my forehead. That's what partners do. The presentation goes flawlessly. The board approves expansion of the protocol to all departments. My research will impact patient care across one of the country's most prestigious hospitals. But the victory I carry home that evening isn't about professional recognition. It's about coming home to someone who celebrated my success by doing the dishes and walking our dog. Later that night, I sit at my desk working on the research paper that will accompany the protocol implementation. Ben has settled into his chair across the room with a book about biotech innovations, occasionally reading aloud interesting passages that might connect to my work. The house is quiet except for the soft turning of pages and the gentle clicking of my keyboard. There's no anxiety about approval, no fear of criticism, no desperate need to prove my worth to anyone. Just peace. I pause in my writing and look around our living room. Books stacked on every surface, 2 coffee mugs on the table, Ben's reading glasses sliding down his nose as he concentrates. This is what happiness looks like. Not flashy or dramatic, just steady and real. My phone sits silent on the desk. The email filters I installed years ago continue their invisible work, ensuring that any attempts at contact from Charlotte disappear before they can reach me. I haven't thought about the Anderson family in months. They've become irrelevant to my daily existence. Sometimes I wonder if Eleanor still tells people she has a daughter who's a doctor. If Richard mentions my achievements to his banking colleagues when the conversation turns to successful children. If Griffin or Beatrice ever think about the sister who simply vanished from their social media feeds and holiday gatherings. But the wondering doesn't hurt anymore. It's just idle curiosity about people who once mattered but no longer do. I return to my research, adding another paragraph to the conclusions section. Outside, Boston settles into its evening rhythm. Ben turns another page of his book. Our life continues in its quiet, purposeful way. I finally understand what Grandma Vance tried to teach me all those years ago when she leaned in close and asked about my chemistry experiments. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when everything matters. And the people who show up? They're sitting right here in this room.